Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Season 6 of Stand Up and Stand Out, Parte y Destacate. I'm your hostess with the mostest, Nikki Green, and we're taking it back to the old school with our original guest interviews you have come to love. We spent the last 2 seasons learning more about the 2 books I launched this year, Chameleon Mindset and The Great Lead Hership Awakening. And now that I've come up for air from the writing and publishing process, I wanted to reach out to my network and share more of the great work others are doing. I hope you enjoy Season 6, and I look forward to hearing your feedback and comments on the fascinating topics we will cover with each of these new guests. Hello, and welcome back to Season 6 of Stand Up and Stand Out. We're talking about community this season and sharing some of the wonderful people I've met through the different networks. Today is Tina Bakehouse, and I'm excited to bring her on the show. Say hi, Tina.
Hello. So great to be here with you, Nikki.
Tina has been more than 20 years of teaching communication and theater, 10 years at Creighton University, a former Disney cast member, favorites of mine, Leadership Iowa participant, and don't forget, TEDx speaker and coach. Tina is passionate about others becoming more self-aware and enhancing their speaker style through transformational workshops and improvisation, storytelling, temperament, and communication, and so much more.
It's so great to be here. I just love your magnetic energy.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, so we met on speakers networking with my speaking coach, Brian. And so it was kind of like we connected and I was like, yeah, we need to talk more. We definitely need to. And we're kind of neighbors, like Chicago to Iowa is pretty close.
It's pretty darn close. I mean, just a hop, skip, and a jump in my car.
Well, why don't you share a little bit more about yourself? I did the bio piece, but obviously more exciting stuff for you to share and talk a little bit about how you help people.
Yeah, thanks, Nikki. So I live on a farm here in Southwest Iowa, and I was that kid growing up in the 80s who just absolutely loved Jim Henson and the Muppets, all things Disney. And so my front porch on the farm was a proscenium stage for all things fun. I would create little shows for my family or use my Fisher-Price little tape recorder and create a radio program. That was my means of a podcast, I guess, when I was a kid. But the idea of storytelling, oratory, performance was always just a fascination for me. And so I definitely found love in getting into theater and being part of the speech team throughout high school and college. And from there, the educator and the heart-centered love of supporting people on that journey started. So I worked in HR for a while, taught high school speech, English, and theater for a while, then got my advanced degrees taught at the college level for 10 years, and then worked in nonprofit promoting the arts here in Iowa. And also then even worked for a bank as a chief creative officer where I got to do some marketing, economic development, and teach financial literacy, which is something I'm not trained in, but use puppeteering and storytelling to make something like that interesting and fun. So I would say now during the pandemic was when I really sat with myself. I was in act 3 of my life and thought, you know what, this side gig of consulting and coaching in the field of communication is where my heart really is. And that's where I just took a leap of faith, jumped out of like a plane, if you will, figuratively speaking, not sure when my feet will land, but knew that they would. And I really not looked back. I've been blessed with some incredible worldwide clients, some cool keynote speeches I've been able to facilitate as well as workshops. So it's been a lot of fun in terms of supporting people and tapping into their inner magnetism to communicate with confidence and clarity.
That's so exciting. And that's really great, right? Is there's so many topics where we need to know more about them. But sometimes, especially finance stuff, if you're not into it, you're not into it. It's, my cup of tea. I love spending my life in Excel, but I think making it approachable, with something like puppets is so important so that more people really still get the benefit of it. And that's the difference, right? Anyone that can tell a really good story can get you engaged in any topics, regardless of whether it's, their passion or not.
Well, exactly. And that's what I found with the arts is that it's always been the solution for me. I've used arts in my journey of all things projects, work related, personal related, that it's that creative spirit. And really, the arts to me healed me during the pandemic because creating those puppet shows with my younger son was a hoot. And got to connect virtually with his classmates in a way that was outside of the box thinking, I feel. And same with living on a farm here. I facilitated multiple ag arts camps, teaching people where their food comes from using art. So I would feel that if I didn't do art, it would not be, it's part of who I am and it calls me. And I think that that's what draws people in and connects us as community.
It's so important. And I think some of the good and bad that happened during the pandemic, right, is like we got this virtual stage to really continue to be able to connect with people, even though we were separated. But now I think a lot of people are still kind of reverting to it and forgetting the importance of, kind of mixing that in person with the virtual. And talk about a little bit, I know like where you live is such an important place for you and how you stay active in the community and use both of those things to your advantage, the in-person and the virtual.
Yeah, I love that you bring up that community is really important, both in person and virtual. I would say that because we had this powerful tool of technology, that kept us connected. I can't imagine what our world would have been like if we had a pandemic 20, 25 years ago. It would have been crazy in terms of this idea of not being able to see each other. I mean, Zoom has allowed us to feel like we're with each other. I can see you and you're in a totally different state. I would say living here on a farm in Southwest Iowa, having that ability to be part of a rural community, whether it's a betterment association or I'm in the humanities of arts in Iowa as the Southwest Iowa representative to bring more arts to the state, having those opportunities to do things in community that you believe in, that in-person energy you just cannot replace. And so I really value that experience of thinking outside of the self and being part of the greater good for the whole. And I did a lot of rural placemaking in the community of Malvern, which is about 15 miles from my home. So I'm very rural. The closest town is 4 miles away of 150 people. So my son likes to make the joke that he is the mayor of Maple Edge Farm because we cannot vote for city government, but we have our own government right here at our farm. And so I think it's balancing that, right? I found with my business, I'm part of an international online networking group, but then I also traveled to Omaha or my other communities to do some in-person pieces where I present workshops, but also do conversations in person. So I think you got to balance the two, especially when you have a business that is communication focused and it's bringing that energy and getting better at it through practice. Because I will say, when we first got online, it was awkward, I think, for a lot of people. And, those first few Zoom workshops were like, is it, you need to unmute. What? Huh? Or the lighting was funky, or I forget to get people into the room. They're sitting there in this weird purgatory. And so we have learned those things, but we embrace, I think, the ability to be able, like, for example, I'm co-facilitating a beautiful women's retreat in Bali. That would not happen had I not had the network of connections through LinkedIn. So one of the gals is from Bali, the other from Toronto, and I'm from Iowa. And so we're blending our magic together in February to go somewhere warm and spiritually empowering to connect with women leaders. So community is everything, and both in person and virtual is amazing.
And that's just it. And this is really where I want to encourage people to kind of get back out of their shells again. I was very fortunate that, working in Silicon Valley for the last 20 years, this was our day to day, like using Zoom, using whatever, WebEx, all the different technologies. So I was used to this kind of interaction, and I had hybrid teams all over the place. Sometimes they worked in the office, sometimes they didn't. But I made it up to me to then go and connect with them instead of trying to force them always to be going to headquarters, is to get to know what their life was like, to go to Omaha, to go to Austin, to go to Singapore, really see, how different their lifestyle was and what was important to them with their families and what was important in their communities. And I just want to keep encouraging people to do that, because as much as I appreciate the convenience of being able to do events virtually like this, we still do need to make that effort to really continue that bridge and continue that conversation in person and continuing to get to know each other on a deeper level than I think sometimes, we can afford time-wise, just sitting here on Zoom, especially when there's a lot of people.
Well, I think there is real big value in that. And part of that's what makes us human, right? Is that need for connection. And it's very, very different when you are virtual versus in person. And you're right. It's so easy to stay in what's convenient and give that link to meet virtually. But I really try to balance that out, because it does it does make a big difference, I think, on our mental health as well, to have that in-person experience.
Yeah. And, as I leave for Dallas tomorrow, I'm there for kind of a 3-day conference, but I always try to book an extra day or two. And then I just reach out to people, and say, hey, I'm going to be in town. Grab a coffee, grab some lunch, grab some dinner, or just to say hello. And it's been really great as I've been traveling around to different places to be able to do that. And sometimes it doesn't work out. That's fine. But also just being top of mind, just, hey, I'm checking out. I'm thinking of you. I know I'm going to be generally where you're at. I don't even necessarily know where everybody lives or know that much about these towns. But here's a great way to learn, right? Is by people that live there. And again, for them to share their community with you and not just sit in the hotel in a conference for, the time you got to be there.
Well, and that's how really fostering rich conversations happens in terms of co-creating messages and experiences together. We experience through food and relationship building and where problems can be solved. I think it's so valuable and important to have those crucial conversations of exploration of why we think differently, what makes your culture different than mine, and exploring different more than ever before so that we can meet and have understanding and comprehension of the why and the how.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nikki Green, and I am a life and business resiliency expert. I have been helping people for over 2 decades overcome their challenges and achieve their life and business goals. I wrote Chameleon Mindset for others seeking clarity while acclimating to new situations. This entertaining yet research-based guide to transitions will open your mind to unique strategies for finding purpose and achieving your goals. Through my new book, you will create the happy life you desire with 5 philosophies for change, beginning with C for creative adaptability. Move from resistance to resilience by assessing and adjusting your risk tolerance. The practical lessons in Chameleon Mindset will help you shift your mindset, sharpen your skill set, and overcome the things holding you back from dealing with change. We'll have the new online course coming soon. There are half a dozen modules in total, but the way you choose to pursue your destiny, it's up to you. Each module can be done independently or repeated as necessary to tackle new obstacles and new goals in your life. And you can earn extra Chameleon coins for uncovering them. What are Chameleon coins, you might ask? These are reward XP that you can earn to purchase additional Chameleon Mindset benefits as you progress through the course. You can get swag, group coaching, one-on-one coaching, exclusive event tickets, and networking opportunities. And if you collect enough coins, you can even earn a full-day VIP intensive with me to work solely on your goals. And by joining the Chameleon crew, you will also gain access to my network of thousands of influential people around the world with expertise to help you on your business, your personal endeavors, health and fitness, and so much more. Reserve a copy today and click below to be added to our subscriber list. Well, and I launched my book this year, but I know you have a great book too, which can probably help a lot. It's always such a birth of love, right? And pain and suffering, like a little bit of all of it.
They don't have an epidural for books. They need to.
But I know my community would really appreciate kind of learning a little bit more about your book, because I know that kind of ties into your speaking and other things where you help people with your workshops.
Absolutely. It's called Discovering Our Magnetic Speaker Within. And that title is very intentional, where I feel the ing at the end of discover is super important. We're always in a journey of learning and knowing and exploring more. I've been doing this for more than 2 decades, and I'm still learning and growing and stretching myself. And then the hour was an intentional pronoun. Instead of your, every communication is a co-creation. It's a we thing. So if you're communicating with someone and they're not listening or you're not engaging them, did it ever really happen? It requires a we. And the magnetic piece, that's a word I've just really enjoyed embracing as part of my brand, which is this idea of making that impact you desire with your words, your body, your voice, your energy, and overall essence to make that connection with self and the other. And the within, it comes from the heart, that it's all about passion leads communication. So I've divided the book into 3 parts: the magnetic mind, message, and mechanics. The mind looks at the brain and how we think and how we view self and the temperament that we have and who is our authentic speaker style, and how do we get out of those conditioned patterns and belief systems, as well as our communication style preferences. and understanding that your audience may have a different preference. How do you reach them best? Then it's that message of getting into what positive psychologists call flow with a dance of conversation as that speaker. Athletes can get into flow, so can communicators as well. And a conversation has a flow to it, as well as looking at your overall messaging and how you structure it and bring in story. And then finally, it's with mechanics, that your presence requires strong vocal and physical delivery and having a clear practice or speaker ritual. So I lay out lots of stories and strategies, exercises to really help any heart-centered leader, anyone, speak and communicate and connect on any space and stage, because we have different contexts. And these 50 different interviews that I engaged in, all the research, it really helped me learn from others as well.
That's so cool that, it's not just like, oh, hey, here's my thoughts on paper, but really getting contributions from others. And this is something that I've seen over time too, is, there's the great leaders haven't always been like the most technically apt, or, that wasn't necessarily where they excelled. It was when they could connect with the people that were working for them. It was what they could motivate them, to be a part of the culture for the company and the mission that they were trying to achieve. And that happens through storytelling. And I think it's so critical, whether you're a business of one and you're trying to reach your clients, or whether you have a business with thousands of employees and you're trying to reach them and your customers, the same, that this ability to better communicate is so, so important. And I've seen a lot of speakers really struggle with this over the last couple of years. I think the more feedback we can get too is like, am I resonating? A lot of people just want to get up there and talk about what they know, which is cool. Right. But yeah, we're back to like the sideshow carnival, right? And like, we're trying to get you to come into the tent and see what's going on behind in the
right. And see that hopefully something will land. And I think that's where tapping into, we need to reach all the learners. How do they grab information? How do they tap into it? I know that I am a kinesthetic and audible learner, which means I love story and I love movement and participation, like by a show of hands, things like that. Visual learning, though I see the value in it, is good for me, but it's not one of my top. And I have to really work harder at that. It's a little less comfortable. So I think you bring up such a great point of it's getting out of the self and into the other to be fully audience centered, and note that maybe our preference may not be the same as other members of the audience.
I think that one is especially important. And some of us have started to kind of figure this out, but it's, again, something that we're not always really taught in school. We're just like, here's the book, go study, take the test, and I'm going to grade you. And for most of us, that probably isn't the best way for us to learn, or come sit to this very riveting, 90-minute lecture in an overly heated room, right? And those things don't work. And for me, I've tried to take, Zoom classes and things like this. And when I've already been on Zoom, all day, I really don't have the attention span for it. Even listening to podcasts, even my own podcast, I do it at 1.5 to 2 speed on most of the stuff, because for me, I just can't and I realize now, had I had some of these better tools when I was younger, I probably could have absorbed so much more. But I can't fast forward a live person when I'm sitting in the class.
Well, and I think it's that healthy, happy balance, right, of getting the downtime and tapping into our spirituality. And that's where community and getting some alone time and balancing that with your community to have a good spiritual practice to go inward, but also balancing that in your work, that you get what Cal Newport calls deep work engaged in your day, where it's 1 to 2 hours of uninterrupted, visionary, creative work. And it's not just process focus, where we can get heavy into the actual emails or those awesome Excel spreadsheets or what have you, where we need to balance all the things. And I have found for me, when we explore different ways of being, and then we show up in a certain way. And so it's letting go of the frenetic. I sometimes like to joke that I'm trauma bonding with busy. And when you get busy and too busy, then guess what? You're not going to be fully present. You're not going to be fully calm and confident and connected. And that's when you start to lose self, and then the self loses the people surrounding them.
I've seen that too often. I think especially this year is I've seen a lot of business owners just busy and struggling. It's been a difficult year with, recession, believe it or not, whatever people want to go at the economic value. But, there's just a shift. There's a shift happening in the markets, in our connectivity, in a lot of it. And people aren't adapting. They're kind of resisting and they're like, well, let me just dive deeper into more emails, more administrative, or whatever the thing is that makes them comfortable. And I really want to encourage people to, especially as we kind of get to the end of the year here, take that step back. I think it's so important to take that pause and get a fresh view on what really did happen this year, what was good, not so great, whatever I want to do better, and make that plan forward and make sure you're working on yourself and your business and all the components together, right?
Well, and I read somewhere that in terms of when you lose the self, being authentic is your home. And busy is part of that, or getting distracted into all the other noise and things around us, and you lose track of the self that you are. And so one practice that I do at the end of every year that someone had shared with me, I think is a cool practice, is I look at my calendar and I celebrate all the things, and I go month by month and said, you landed this new client. How great is that? And I say it out loud, and it takes a couple hours to go day by day of every month. But what I think that does is celebrate who you are, the experience of being that creative that you are, and then kind of setting that intention for that following year.
Oh, that's good. And I think something more people need to do instead of jumping into what were all the things that didn't come together, right? Is like probably a lot of stuff actually really went well. So let's focus on that and end the year on a high and feel good and feel validated that, the work you did put in was worthwhile, and make sure you know where you need to pull back a bit and focus more on probably something slightly different, right?
No, absolutely. And I think it's always good to have that reflection, and also maybe pick one thing as opposed to 20 things that you want to try and fix, do, and whatever. And so one thing is looking at spirituality and how can I ground myself consistently. And I know that nature is important, and also getting within a community and balancing the solo practice with the group practice.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important. Well, and one thing that I'm excited about, and another reason why we connected, is as I go into next year, I'm going to be starting to do some in-person retreats, because I think for me too, that in-person connection is so important. And I really want to pull people out of their routines to sit still and focus on themselves and their goals. But I know you've been running retreats and you've got some exciting new stuff coming up. So maybe before we head out, share a little bit more. I know you kind of hinted at Bali, but you've also been doing retreats there in Iowa as well. So
Yeah. So in the past, I had done retreats here at my home where I've had goats where you learn a lot from a goat, which is really hilarious. There's something about animals. And I got inspired when I myself went to a leadership experience with horses. And you can see and mirror that energy that you put onto an animal. They don't lie. They non-verbally tune in. And so I took that and have tapped into self-awareness and communication style and ways of being and leadership, and how do you show up in different contexts. And I do retreats for teams when they want a different space. It's an 1880s Victorian home right here on the farm, and just getting out in nature. It's a wide open space where we have places to walk, reflect, and experience, whether it's sharing your story, learning those 5 beats of a great story, or getting into a yes and mindset, which is what an improviser does on stage. And as you noted, Nikki, I'm super excited to collaborate with these two women with an upcoming 1 week amazing women's retreat in Bali. And we're going to do healing waters. It's going to be learning more about how you communicate, what your temperament and the self that you are, and do that exploration and leadership style, but also some spirituality. So it's that mind, body, and soul piece. And how do you show up, and how do you want to transform? And I think that's especially important as we lean into it. It's hard to believe we've got Thanksgiving and the holidays, and boom, the new year. It's like, woof. We start talking like, oh, I'll put you on my calendar, like in September, like, oh, I'll put you in 2024, which is crazy. But we just think, right, when we hit the new year, new you. And I do feel that this upcoming Bali retreat I've heard from people who've been there that you leave changed. You can't not leave changed, mainly because of the culture there, of how their connection to earth and to each other, and their way of being, and how they aren't into the busy. That culture is very into the calm and peace. And I think we make it's a misguided viewpoint, if you will, if we think peace is boring and that we have to quickly like be productive and do. We are human beings, not human doers. And I think that that's part of my practice is getting in spaces, but also even finding that space right here at home too, within the heart and within state of being.
Oh, beautiful. I think that's such an important pivot that I'm seeing happening with the younger generations. And I really hope it continues. And I hope more of us in the older generations do take that time and kind of start to get rid of some of those bad habits of that overly busy and we've got to stay productive. Because I think the more we spend doing this important work and building true community with ourselves and with others, the more we can actually accomplish together. So I'm excited to see all you're going to accomplish. If folks want to join you or learn more about you, Tina, let them know where they can find you.
Yes. My website is a great place to start. That's tinabakehouse.com. Tina, Tina, Bakehouse, B as in boy, AKE, house. So bake as in baking cookies, house as in casa.com. And you can definitely reach out to me. I would love to have that connection, conversation. And it lists events as well as other options for how to work with me one-on-one in a consulting coaching relationship, as well as with really great team building workshops virtually or in person.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I know you and I are going to spend lots of quality time together as we go into the new year. Who knows doing what, but we'll find a way. I know, but it's definitely involving some goats because that's pretty much one of my favorite. All right, everyone. Well, it's time to say goodbye. I won't sing the song this time because I'm still a little bit congested for Michael. But it has been a pleasure having Tina here and continuing to share more with you guys about the different communities that I belong in. Very excited to continue to bring folks into the Chameleon Crew so that you guys can get to meet some of these other great mentors and community members that I share my days with. Thanks everyone for joining us today for another episode of Stand Up and Stand Out. You know you can catch us where all the cool kids hang out that do podcasts on all the major platforms. And if you want to connect with Nikki directly, you can get a hold of me on my personal site, thenikkigreen360.com. There you can check out my website, you can see any of my new books, you can learn more about this podcast, and follow us on social. Can't wait to hear from you, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye.